Hello and welcome to GM Tips, the show where my friends and I share with you our thoughts and suggestions on how to game master your role-playing game. I'm your host, Satine Phoenix, co-creator of Maze Arcana and a dungeon master for D&D. Today's theme is Teach Through Playing. As I've said before on the episodes about kids, I don't have much experience here, but as a big kid, I can professionally say that I enjoy learning about things while playing games. Some people don't do well sitting by themselves reading and absorbing information. They need interactive connection to learn. You hear about kids who are incredibly smart failing in class because they're bored. They're called lazy even though they're not. Turns out, they just learn differently. And in 2017, there are lots of programs that understand this. Adults who appreciate the range of learning capacities and have proactively begun developing products to help others get the chance they deserve outside of the normal school system. I could roll on, but instead, let's discuss this with game designer, author, and founder of Playground Adventures, BJ Hensley! Yay! Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So I know how fabulous you are, but why don't you tell everybody what Playground Adventures is about?
Playground Adventures is a family-friendly company that I founded several years ago based on the fact that there just wasn't a lot of kids material out there. And there wasn't a lot of family-friendly material out there. So I have 6 kids, and my oldest is 21 now. But years ago when he first decided to start GMing with his little brothers, they didn't have the things that I was writing for them previously, and so I wanted to get some pre-made modules for them because Mommy didn't have quite enough time in her day. And I bought some, which I will leave nameless, off of Amazon to give as a Christmas gift, and it came in the mail, and I opened it up, and I'm reading it, and I was like, oh, this does not work. And it was okay for the older kid, but not so much for the children that were at the table, the younger children at the table. And so I searched around, and I was like, there's nothing. What am I supposed to do here? My kids want a game, but there's nothing. And so that's how Playground Adventures was born. I wanted to provide adventures for other families and my own family. And also, I have autistic children who I have used games with to foster educational pursuits and to teach them moral choices that are appropriate and how to sort of socially interact with people because they're just, they don't know what they're doing. But if you can get them in something that's a character that's not them, well, then they're more outgoing and they learn and they get excited about the game and they get experience points if they make the right choice,
That's so cool.
So I decided to use the company for that. And I've been doing games in schools and for special needs and autistic and ADD kids for a long time. So it was just sort of a natural progression into let's make this out there for everybody to use instead of just myself.
Oh, that's cool. So as somebody who doesn't have kids, what does family-friendly actually mean?
Family-friendly actually just means you can pick it up and run it in any environment. So you can run it with a 4-year-old under your table. You can run it with, 18-year-olds. We have Pixies on Parade is one of our most popular modules, and everybody loves it. Like, it got nominated for, top 10 of 2016. It's got 5-star reviews. Everybody loves it, and it doesn't seem to matter what age you are because it's all about imagination magic, and there's something for everybody in it. But there's nothing in it that is going to offend any age group. It's not going to be over the top for the 4-year-old to be listening to it, but it's still going to be enjoyable for the older child or adult at the table.
Does that mean that there's not any gore, or what kind of non-offensive?
Okay, so there's not, you won't see a lot of gore, you won't, and now you can actually alter things to make them that way, because in Zeitgeist, Tilo, he loves Pixies on Parade, but he turns it into this wicked dark thing for his table, which is easily done, but you have to do that yourself. We have not done that. It's sort of just on the edge. So there's not a lot of gore. We try to encourage positive choices. So it's not just go in and murder hobo everything. You actually have to make some choices in there, and you get extra benefits if you pay attention and use your brain power and put your listening ears on a little bit. We don't do adult type relationships in there ever. We use him and her, theys. We don't. Anything that someone would think of as just not quite appropriate to discuss around children, you'll not find in those. Now, we do have a 12 and up line, and our 12 and up line is sort of like creature components, which
we have.
Yes, creature components is right here.
I got it. Thank you for giving it to me.
Yes, you're welcome. So this is our 12 and up line, and it is a little bit different. It has a disclaimer on it that says, if you don't want your kids chopping up creatures and collecting their bits to create stuff, this probably isn't something that they need. But it's stupidly popular. It got seal of approval. It's recommended as essential. It was actually one of the top 10 of last year. But at the same time, it's not really, really dark.
So what's the difference between the 12 and over and the 12 and under?
A 4-year-old probably wouldn't find this entertaining, going and probably shouldn't be having
it's more cerebral?
Yeah, well, it's just more for older kids. It's things that older people or adults are more interested in. Like in A Friend in Need, which I've run you through on a different show, that is very much geared toward just starting out and we're learning. And,
it was so cute.
And do we make friends with the golem, or do we try to attack it or whatever? And so it's very much a learning how to role play experience. Whereas our 12 and up line assumes that you already know what's going on here, and we're just kind of going to go forward. And there might be a little bit more of creature battle and blood, and you might see someone actually die in the like a monster, not like a person. But
so that is something that you don't experience.
No,
we
we always leave it up to the people running the adventure, of course, if you want something to just die, and that's fine. But one of the things that I always advise, and we have in our books, I do the advice blocks, and one of my advice blocks is how to handle death. So if the children are at your table and they're very young and they're very sensitive, you can't kill the creature because they're going to cry. They're going to be like, I know I was a goblin, but I don't understand. and so you have to manage that. So, and there's various ways to manage it. You can be like, well, they're defeated and they're just passed out, and you can loot their body and run away. Yeah. Or you could just have them disappear, and they just disappear. They've gone back to the monster forest or wherever they've come from. Or then, of course, you can actually go on and be like, well, now you've killed it, and these are the are the repercussions of this. But there's a decision that we leave up to parents. We do not, in our 12 and under, we do not ever have anything just dying. Usually, it's just up to the people running the game.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And I think the younger line is definitely more geared toward teaching them to not run around and just kill everything. So you get bonuses for making good choices.
Cool. Why don't we talk a little bit about your educational line? Because I think it's really fascinating that you've decided to help kids learn through gaming.
So my children have always learned a little bit differently. I have an 18-year-old who can solve a Rubik's Cube in like a minute, but he can't manage to get through a seminar and retain anything. And there's a lot of other children in the world that are like that. I feel like we don't spend enough time catering to the highly intelligent children, and then we spend a lot of time wondering why we don't have new scientists. They need a little bit of a different thing. And kids learn really well when they're having fun. We call it gamification in education. So for them to be able to sit down at the table and play a game and it's educational, that's exciting to them. And a lot of times they just don't realize it. They don't even realize they're learning. I have seen children who absolutely despise reading get into these tabletop games, and they're sitting there reading a 400-page rule book, oh my gosh, this is great. And then suddenly they go from there to get into books. And then the next thing you know, they're reading on high levels that they never would have been before because it started out as a game. And it's the same with math. Like, I don't know if you've played much Pathfinder, but you got to practically do algebra to play that game. And I have children who come, either my own children or from scouts or schools or PTA events or what have you, and they hate math. They're like, oh, I don't like numbers, I don't like math, I'm bad at math, I can't do math. And I'm like, well, everybody can do math. And they will sit and they will be doing like algebra to make sure their character has the best equipment and stats possible, and then they absorb it. And that was something I noticed very early on when I was working with schools and younger children. And it eventually evolved into what we call our fun and facts line. So these are adventures that teach you things while you're playing games.
Oh, that is so cool.
And kids love it. They're learning almost without being aware that they're learning a lot of the time. And then we went a little bit further because schools only have so much time, right? And parents only have so much time. Like, if your kids want to play a game and you want to GM for them, that's wonderful, but you don't have 4 hours. And kids want to complete things. If they start a game, if it's a board game or a video game, they really don't want to put it down until it's done. So we created after-school adventures, which are adventures that are meant to be finished up in like 20 minutes to an hour.
Oh, wow.
And many of those incorporate, like this one here, are educational pursuits. So you've got the fun and facts, but it's also short. So in this one, they're actually doing a chemistry experiment while they're role-playing.
That is cool.
So and they get to do hands-on things. They get to be working with their hands and actually do the experiment in order to, I think, save somebody's life.
Yeah, there's some bottles, just some potion bottles here. It's pretty cool.
The chemistry experiment, they get to make the potions.
Cool.
And they have so much fun with it. It's a bit of a mess, but they have so much fun with that. They really do.
So as a gamer nerd parent, how do you get your kids to play?
That is the question that I'm asked all the time. Everybody who talks to me is like, how do you get your kids into that? How do parents get their kids into that? And the only thing I have to say is it's best if you start young. And a lot of people think, well, I've been asking my kids and asking my kids and asking my kids. Stop. that's your problem. Kids don't want to do the things their parents want them to do. When my kids were smaller, we did one of two things that were really important. One is we told them bedtime stories. And yeah, we would read books during the day and stuff, but we told them bedtime stories. And these bedtime stories were often interactive. So think choose your own adventure, but you're making it up off the cuff and you're telling a story and you tell them, and this is what happens. And what do you think we should do here? Or what do you think you would do if you were in this situation? And they will come up with the most amazingly insane creative answers, especially when they're very small.
Oh, cool.
And that is, they're having fun and they're being included and it's part of their bedtime routine and they're actually learning how to role play. And the other thing we did is we said, no, you're too little to play this game. And we would have the adults at the table and we would build blanket forts under the big game table. And they would sit under there and they would listen to the stories because they weren't old enough to play yet. And so they wanted to do it because they wanted to do what the big people were doing. And they sort of almost absorbed the rules and the how-tos as they were hanging out under the table listening to the adults play. And that is the best way to do it, is instead of chasing them down and browbeating them with it and being like, you've got to play this so that we can do a thing together, just say no, be a little distant, and a lot of times they will come to you.
It's very clever.
Yeah, it is.
So once you get your kid to play, how do you get them to find the courage to role play?
You mean like actually playing and getting into their character?
Yeah, versus, because what I noticed at Meltdown when I had kids at the table, they were really shy, mostly because they were around different people they weren't familiar with. But after a little while, they would warm up if their parents kind of gave them the permission. But I just find that a lot of kids are very I don't want to do the wrong thing.
Yeah. Well, I start out most games by telling them that you can't do anything wrong. There's no right and wrong here. We're just here to have fun.
Okay.
The other thing I can tell you is if they're not going to be playing with them, dismiss the parents. That's very helpful.
Oh, yeah?
And sometimes there are children, I work with a lot of special needs children, and so there are times when you must have the parent at the table. But if the child is uncomfortable with their parents there and the parents wandering off and the parents are okay with it, a lot of times just being able to be open around other children and not have the adults sitting there too is very helpful. And I am very, very much a child. So for me, it's a little bit easier because I'm like, so we're just going to have fun. And I get very into it and I get very active and I use props and I use voices and I'm being silly and I'm playing with them. And so they play off me.
Oh,
if
cool.
you're excited and you're really into it and you are displaying exactly what you want them to do, they are going to pick it up 9 times out of 10. Now, there are our kids that are a little bit more shy, of course, but for the most part, show them how you want them to behave and they will mimic you because their brain says, oh, that's the right way to do it because that's the person in charge.
And that's what kids do.
And that's what
cool.
kids do.
So, you've got your kids at the table. Mm-hmm. Say you've got 4 of them. Okay. You got the super shy one, you got the super brave one, you got the hyperactive one. How do you manage all those different personalities?
It's a little bit, you have to be organizational about it, that's for sure. One thing I say is because children are very, very busy, you must always have something else to do at the table because they're not going to want to take turns, they're going to want to talk all over each other and everything else. So to keep them busy when it's not their turn, I always try to have a coloring book. We actually, at Playground Adventures, we produced a coloring book for this purpose. So when cons are asking me, what can I do or what can I donate, I'm like, I will give you this coloring book. You can print out these sheets and they're puzzles or coloring pages, or there's one where they get to tell their own story. It's like a picture of the fiery furball inn, and then there's some lines at the bottom. It says, what do you think goes on here? Can you tell us? And then they will have very interesting stories, and a lot of times we'll actually pick those up and then put them in a book later. So it's very cool. So keep their hands busy. Always keep their hands busy. They can't sit there for an extended period of time. But also, this here is my game aid, and this is Unni.
So cute.
Hi, Unni. And what Unni does is she has the magic to give you the power to talk. And I introduce the Unni to children at the table, especially if we have a variety of different types of children, because the hyperactive children will talk over the shy child every time. And as a hyperactive child myself, I fully understand this, and I want the shy children to come out of their shell. They need to have time to think. And unfortunately, the hyperactive children are like, let me help you with your character, and oh, you need to do this. And Unni helps because if you're not holding Unni, you can't speak.
Oh, very cool.
And so we pass her around, and so if it was your turn, I would say, okay, it's your turn, and you would take Unni. Now I would be quiet. And see, now it's my turn to talk. You see how that works?
Yeah.
And it really helps. And because a lot of the shyer children, they sort of stutter through, and you say, and you have to encourage them. You have to be like, well, what do you want to do? And sometimes they won't know. They'll be like, deer in headlights. Even with Unni, they're deer in headlights. And so you got to be like, 3 things. Anything more than 3 things is too much. It's too much for their brain. They have to have 3 or less things to choose from. So you give them, you could do this, or this, or this. What do you think would be the best thing to do? Or what do you want to do? What do you think would be fun? And they'll pick one. If you give them options, they will pick one. And then and you sort of draw them out of their shell that way with description and fun and interactive questions. But you have to have the one-on-one quiet to be able to do it, which is where Unni comes in very handy.
Oh, that is really cool. I hope you guys, that's so valuable. Thank you for sharing that. Talk a little bit about Hero Lab.
Hero Lab. So yes, I also work for Lone Wolf Development. We are the makers of Hero Lab. And it's actually a fantastic game aid and works very well with Playground Adventures because kids love technology. And especially if you are trying to game with teenagers, they want it to be on their level and in today's world.
Cool.
And we're rolling dice and using a pencil. Who uses a pencil? And so you can hand them an iPad with their character on it that rolls the dice for them and everything's in there and it's just push of a button. And they love it. And it helps bridge that connection between old school gamer and today's, more modern teenager. The other thing is as much as I am a fan of make the kids do the math so they can learn, there are plenty of children who really still don't want to do the math. And so they don't want to get into the game because making a character is too hard or they're just too hyperactive and making a character takes too long. You can set these kids down with Hero Lab and they can make a character in just a handful of minutes. And it's
cool.
It's amazing how quick you can make them. Seriously, my kids actually do competitions. They're like, who can make a faster character? And seriously. So it's just a wonderful tool. And now we're getting ready to come out with Hero Lab Online. So it's going to be available on Apple and Windows and Android phones and everything. And it's beautiful. The user interface is so gorgeous. And we're geared toward drawing in today's modern crowd instead of being a little dated like it looks right now. Cool. So it's a great aid. Any kind of electronic aids actually are good to have at the table as long as you have rules. You have to have rules. You're like, okay, here's the iPad with your character, but that doesn't mean you're checking Facebook and playing Angry Birds.
Yeah.
So you do have to be careful with that, but it is definitely a very useful tool to have at your table.
You told me a secret earlier, and I want to share it with the world.
I did tell you a secret earlier. Can we share it? Can we share it now?
Yes, do it now.
Okay, so we're really excited to announce that not only is Playground Adventures launching our new rule system, Unni, the ultimate nexus of imagination, we just acquired the rights to produce a role-playing game for the last unicorn!
Oh my God, that's so cool!
We're
Congratulations.
so excited, thank you!
So I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
What is your pre-game house rule?
Well, it's actually Unni, so I've already talked about her. So yeah, this is my pre-game house rule. The other thing is, I usually start out every game explaining Unni and saying, and we're just here to have fun, so it doesn't matter what you do, and you can't do anything wrong. Just be yourself.
Cool. Favorite GM moment?
Oh gosh, I have 2. Okay, so my kids, as I said, they play under the table, right? And this is something that goes on in our house fairly regularly. And when they were much smaller, they were under the table coloring, and the adults had kind of forgotten they were there. And I was GMing, and we were going through this rough dungeon, and I'm running the players through it. And they've been beat up, and they're bleeding, and they're tired, and they walk into this cavern-like room where they think, finally, we're going to have a moment to rest. And then a black dragon descends through a hole in the ceiling and lands before them. And these people have been run through the ringer to the point that they're tired. And so everybody at the table, all the players just pause and it's silent because they're thinking, oh God. And from under the table in a tiny voice you hear, dun, dun, dun. And the whole table just busts out laughing. So to this day, it's a thing in our house. From other areas of the room, when something is happening at the table, no matter who's playing, someone who's not there will say that at a random point in the game, and everybody laughs. And so that's
really cute.
one of my favorite moments.
Quick tip to the audience.
The best tip I have for you is brain breaks. Like, everybody needs a brain break every now and again. And if you are gaming with children, or you are gaming with, autistic people, or, hyperactive individuals, or whatever you want to call it, they need time away from the table. So you'll notice there is a point in your game, especially if you have young children at the table, where they're getting antsy, and they're getting cranky, and they're fighting with each other, and you're like, deep breath. That is when they need a brain break. You need to get them up from the table. You go outside and beat each other up with pool noodles. Have a battle with lightsabers. Run around the table. See who can beat each other to the end of the road, or whatever it is. Dance around. We do a thing where we say, get our wiggles out. So when everybody is just obviously just at each other and this isn't working anymore, we say, brain break. We're going to get our wiggles out. and then we turn on music, and we dance, and we get our wiggles out, and then we go back to the table, and our brain is refreshed, and it's ready to proceed with the adventure.
Do you do that for you? Because I feel like I would just do that for me.
We do it for everybody. Plus, I just like to get my wiggles out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please share with everyone where we can find you on the internet.
Of course. You can find us at playgroundadventures.net if you're looking for Playground. You can also find us on Facebook at Playground RPGs, and it's the same for Twitter, Playground RPGs. You can find me, BJ Hensley, on Facebook as well. And if you're looking for Hero Lab, the Lone Wolf Development Company, is wolflair.com.
Cool. As always, I'm Satine Phoenix at Satine Phoenix. You can ask me GM tip questions at #AskSatine. Pick up and play one of my Guild Add-Up supplements for the Tomb of Annihilation at dmsguild.com. Watch me on Sagas of Sundry, Dread on ProjectAlpha.com. Catch me live every Sunday at noon on Maze Arcana's Orphan Echo on twitch.tv/Maze Arcana, and every Tuesday night, Dungeon Mastering on twitch.tv/D&D. Thank you for watching us here on Geek and Sundry. See you next time. But BJ.
Yes?
Would you please GM us out of here?
I'd love to, darling. A soft green light impairs your vision, and the world before you begins to dim. Familiar objects become no more than barely discernible shadows before even they are gone from view. But this doesn't inspire fear of the unknown as you would expect. Instead, you feel the burdens of your adult life flee from your mind until all that is left is light and love and childlike joy. As the world comes into focus once more, you see sunbeams dancing through a maze of towering bamboo stalks that form a dense green forest around you. Birds chirp as they weave through the leafy canopy, and small animals scurry around the edges of the dirt trail you find yourself upon. Two tiny chipmunks bicker with one another in the path before you, and you can't help but be amused. As the chipmunks resolve their issues and skitter away, a bright yellow creature darting through the bamboo catches your eye. What is it? Where is it going? It's too big to be a butterfly, and it doesn't quite look like any bird you've ever seen before. As you watch, the brilliant yellow flyer flits closer, landing gracefully on a leaf nearby. Upon closer inspection, you realize it's a paper crane, folded expertly out of yellow rice paper. It peers at you almost thoughtfully for a moment before leaping from its leafy perch to land upon your shoulder and gently nudge your cheek. Gazing at this puzzling creation, you notice that scribbled letters peek out from beneath its delicate wings, and a bold script along its side reads, "Your adventure begins now."